Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips. Hope you are well. So I want to try a different format today. What we're doing is we started a live Feedback Friday on each Friday, unsurprisingly. And today I want to share with you the recording from last Friday where people submitted their tracks and they got live feedback from my co-coach at EDM Tips, Neel. Thank you so much to all of the members of the EDM Tips Academy who submitted tracks. It went down really well and long may it continue. If you do want to submit your tracks for Feedback Friday, you have to be a member of the EDM Tips Academy. So if you join any of our courses over on the EDM Tips website, that automatically gives you eligibility to submit your tracks for feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Neel, and this is last Friday's live Feedback Friday.
Hey, what's up everyone? We are officially live here from EDM Tips, getting ready to go deep into those Feedback Friday threads. We'll just hang out for a couple of minutes while some people flow in. Meanwhile, I'll be active on the chat, so if at any point you guys have some feedback, any questions, you guys want me to dive deeper into anything, don't hesitate to drop it in that chat. I'll be doing my best, keep an eye on it, be responding to those comments, mix of live and a bit of typing out and stuff. Should be a great time. Let me tell you, I'm so pumped for this, guys. It's been a long time coming. Will and I have been talking about this for a couple of months now, and it's finally time to launch. So thank you guys for tuning in. With that, we are at the top of the hour, so you know what? Let's go ahead and kick it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over here. I've got the Feedback Friday thread pulled up and a handful of the the initial tracks originally kind of queued up, ready to go. What I'm gonna be trying to do here is limit listening to about 30 to 45 seconds on any given track, just in the interest of time. I know some of you guys are creating some just awesome tracks, but they are upwards of 6 minutes. We just naturally can't get to everyone if we listen through everything. So going to be keeping it limited to about 30 to 45 seconds of the track. I'll be jumping around a little bit, catching a bit of the intro, maybe checking out the drops, some of the transitions, that sort of stuff. If you're in the chat and your track comes up and there's a specific moment of this track that you really want us to be listening to, just shout it out. Just say, hey, you know what, check out 30 seconds in this track or something, and I'll start listening from there. Past that, I'm going to be trying to, keep my comments, relatively, mass market pleasing, so to speak. I'm not going to get super in detail, but I am going to, tailor them to the level of the track. So if you've submitted a track and you're right at that top level, I'm probably going to give you some pretty detailed feedback there. And if I'm noticing that, the fundamentals are a little bit lacking, of course, that's where we're going to be focusing on. Within each of these, I'm going to try to keep us to about, 3 to 5 minutes per track, just so we can make it through as many as possible. The reality is there are a ton of submissions, just in general, but especially this week. I know a lot of these are your guys' actual comments, but there are a ton of submissions. So I'm going to be just going in order here, right from the top, making my way down the list. If we don't get to you, I'm sorry. We will be back next week. We're going to be doing this every single week. I'm going to keep a list of who we've, gotten every week, who we've missed. And if you don't get covered this week, you are going to be at the priority next week. So with that, let's go ahead and get in. Just seeing some chat things. Jack's asking, are you broadcasting feedback in 10 minutes? Yes, absolutely. Okay, cool. Awesome. Sounds like it is good and live for you guys. Let me know if anyone else is running into problems with the stream at any point. This is our first time going on this. It's a little bit of a guinea pig run. Huge shout out to the Kovu who stopped in early, helped me, get a little bit of these, settings right, make sure it was running smoothly for all of you guys. If at any point, though, like I said, this is the first run, don't hesitate to let us know if there's anything that you think could be improved about this. We just want to make this as, awesome as possible, moving forward. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and kick it off. We're going to get into the first track here. Huge shouts to Jack Parker. Boom, got first. Absolutely did. He was ready to go. See you in chat. Let's check out what you've got. Really cool intro going on here. Love the delays you have in there. The groove of those shakers is fitting perfectly with the groove of that delay. Really good attention to detail on that. Skip ahead here. Ooh, nice little sound effect. Let's just check out something kind of near the end here. right, you know what? We can go ahead and get into this. I'm liking what I'm hearing right here from the start, Jack. I think that the fundamentals of your track works phenomenally. You've got really good tonal relationships between the bass, those chords, that melody or arpeggiator that's popping up there. The groove is all fitting together nicely. The overall flow of the track seems to have a good ebb and flow of energy. Things are kind of growing over time. I think at this point, what we really need to focus on is the processing and mixing, like really beefing everything up, maybe touching on automation a little bit more, and then looking at how we can vary some of the other things, throughout the track. So for example, if I'm listening to like some of the percussion layers over here, right, like that shaker tambourine is like pretty constantly going a ticka 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 ticka. Right, I would like to hear a little bit more evolution on there, whether it's, through some additional side chaining and just volume pumping up and down. Maybe you automate just a tiny bit of like reverb or delay on there over time, open up the filters, something to just give it a little bit more movement to that. The way to kind of think about this is, hey, if there were an actual tambourine player up there shaking, the tambourine, getting into it and stuff, how would their energy change throughout a phrase from section to section? And as we, kind of build up the energy in the rest of the track, right? We're going to expect a little bit, more kind of spill, a little bit more splash and stuff in those higher energy sections. And then in those lower energy sections, it'll be a little bit tighter, a little bit smoother. So looking towards, some of those more subtle layers and how we can create a little bit of evolution there, I think would be awesome. Another big thing that kind of stood out to me was that ARP layer. I think it's a really, really pretty sound to start. And what's nice about it is like the relative thinness does help it stand out against that really kind of lush pad background area, but I do think it could use just a little bit more beef. So maybe throwing on some additional saturation, some sort of like high-end, transformer, something like an amp, any other sort of plugin that can kind of boost and thicken that high end a little bit more. I'm not referring to just, a standard EQ boost in that upper area, because I think when we just use, transparent EQ boosts on things like leads, sometimes it works, but a lot of the times it's just going to bring out the harshness, the tinniness of the sound. Really what I want is a thickening effect on that. So some hefty saturation, focus towards that high end. I think that's going to be the way to go, and you're going to end up with a killer track. So huge shout out to Jack. Way to be, first on the chat. Way to hit us with an absolutely stellar track to kick this off. If anyone else has any comments for him, drop those in the Twitch chat. Getting a lot of good compliments. I cannot disagree with any of you guys. This thing sounds sweet. All right. With that, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So we're going to just go as best as we can. We're going to make it through as many tracks here. So this next one is by Woods. This is Everything. Not sure if you're on the chat with us here, but hopefully you'll catch the recording. If not, by the way, everyone here, this is going to be recording, so if you miss something, you want to check it again later, we are going to be uploading this. We'll keep you posted on that. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get into Everything here. Let's see what we got. Ooh, little mix in here. Really cool groove going on here. It took us a second to kind of get into the full feeling and rhythm of it, but once it's going, it is going for sure. If anyone caught that little double kick right there, that little extra turnaround at the end of the phrase, made a huge difference, keeps things interesting. Well done. Really cool, like a little washout over here. Something I just heard over this, I think it would be nice to have a little bit more of like a reverb splash going across this transition. The elements and the way they carry over is really nice. Also, this little moment, I'm gonna replay that in a second. That's really nice. But during this whole section right here, I feel like a little bit more reverb carryover from that previous section would help us just make that a little smoother, connect the vibe. Man, super neat section right here. one thing I think that'll actually really help with this particular track, in addition, kind of like what I actually said with Jax, I think just some extra thickening on a lot of these layers is going to help out. Just added saturation is going to be what we need. I think the core of what you've got going on works. The other thing I would like to also see is a little bit more movement and variation among some of these layers. I think honestly the kick and the clap are one of the best places to start. So everything else has a lot of evolution to it. We're going up and down in volume, filters are opening and closing, reverb amounts are adjusting. And sometimes it can be nice to keep the drums relatively dry over that. It helps keep a constant rhythm, keeps it cutting through the mix, keeps that dance floor moving. But I do feel it's a little bit static, a little bit dry in the mix. So simple things like, if you don't want to actually change up the overall kick and snare, maybe you add a little bit of reverb splash from time to time. Like every other snare could have that extra amount of reverb. So you get a boom, clap, boom, clap, boom, clap, boom, clap, sort of effect. Something like that could end up being really cool here. Something really cool to call out about this section, a huge win that Woods, and I believe this is Richard here, has, is typically we talk about having our hi-hats and our percussion sit at the very top of the mix, and then melodies and everything else kind of sit below it, chords, bass, and et cetera, et cetera. With this particular track, we've actually seen a really cool thing where our leads are sitting at the very top of our mix. The brightness of those is what's occupying those high-end frequencies. And to avoid competition with something like the hi-hats, right? Because if we bring those leads up, we're going to be masking, those hi-hats. Our percussion's not going to be quite as strong. So what Richard's done here, what Woods has, is some lower sets of hi-hats. Those have a little bit lower tonality, right? They're not like, it's more like, and that allows them to sit separately in their own space from those leads. Killer track. All right. Yeah, if anyone has anything else they want to add here for Woods, drop it in that chat. Seeing a lot of positive feedback yet again. We've started out with just 2 absolute bangers here, guys. Well done. All right. Let's get into this next one. So this next one's coming from Mikhail Stenar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We've got 80 days left. So I'll like usual, I'll go ahead and just start out listening to some of the intro, kind of skip around, and we'll dive in from there. And another little mix in here. These are good for, DJs, for, if you're going for a longer mix, which this one absolutely is, being around 6 minutes. If you're uploading to Spotify, for those of you who are, wanting to build a profile on Spotify, build an audience, I'd focus on just, getting straight to the start of that track, skip the mixing thing. Now for SoundCloud, again, for DJs, that sort of stuff, this is perfect, but the average casual listener is going to want to just get straight into it. So just keep that in mind, if you are working across one of these longer genres. That evolution right there is really nice. You can hear those synths kind of opening up. And that transition was really, really pretty. So we had that tonal element kind of coming near the end of the section, and then it carried on over the start of this new one. Finding elements like that start across, the end of one section and carry over to the next one is a really, really nice way to create some smoothness as you go from section to section. Particularly if you're going from something with a decent amount of high energy, like, this section with some drums and stuff, to a really ambient texture. Really beautiful ambience right here. Awesome. All right, another really solid foundation here, Mikhail. I can't think of anything that I'm hearing wrong with like the notes you've chosen, the sounds you've chosen, or anything else. I think the biggest focus for you in your music right now is going to be really nailing down the mixing. And more so than, worrying about like EQ relationships, sidechain compression, that sort of stuff, I'm really mostly referring to just levels and saturation. some of those, elements, like especially in the intro right here, like that little clap sound that's coming in, like that clappy, snappy sort of sound, is really loud compared to those other elements. And don't get me wrong, none of them are like super loud and like painful or anything else of the sorts. But because it's that much louder than everything else going on in the mix, we kind of fall off of attention from those other elements. Instead, if we get a little bit less differentiation in them, if some of those, other tonal elements are brought up in volume, maybe have a little extra saturation on them, I think we're going to end up with a lot thicker of a sound, something that really carries forward that energy to match everything else that's going on in this track. Because like I said, I think the writing is where you need it to be. I think it's really just processing, beefing up at this point. Another thing that I kind of noticed about this is there wasn't anything like off about the groove. Everything was gelling together, but it did feel just a little bit stale and stagnant. If I'm, playing this and counting out the beat here, right, and like giving yourself that 16th note rhythm, whatever's going on in there, that tick 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 tick. I feel like we could have a little bit more kind of swing and movement to this. So if you're in Ableton, try playing out with that groove pool. If you are already using the groove pool, just try using some with a little bit higher values. Or if you're like, for example, if you're on the MPC 8 and you're not really hearing too much of a groove change, it could be that a lot of the groove that I'm hearing here is actually based on the 16th note. So try out one of those MPC 16s. If you're in Logic or another DAW, do the equivalent. I know Logic has its swing functions and you can select 8th note, 16th note, etc., etc. Just check to make sure you're on that 16th note, and I think you'll be able to get a decent amount of kind of push and pull in the groove of this track. One last thing that I think could really, really help with this is you've got some lovely ambience textures in here. Some really nice pads that have these really, really long tails, good sense of body, good sense of depth and width. I think we could, maybe toss a little bit of reverb on the snare drum from time to time to help kind of mimic that. When I'm listening to this snare, it sounds relatively dry here. I guess it's not really snare. It's more like that noise perk that I'm hearing kind of in between those kicks. The boom, boom, click-a, right? Like that little noise in there. I think that could benefit from just having a little like long tail reverb on it. Having a few elements in your percussive mix that have those long tail reverbs can really help, emphasize that big sense of space. If, what's currently happening, we have, these really long, epic pads and stuff, but all of our drums are really, really tight and dry, it does create a degree of separation in our mix. Now, a lot of dryness on a lot of those drums, so like for example, the kick, maybe the hi-hats, that's okay. But if every element in that drum kit is dry, it does, create that little bit of disconnection there. So again, just a little bit more reverb on those like little perks, that sort of stuff. I think that would be a really nice touch. All right. Sweet stuff. Another great tune. Let's hear it in the chat here for Mikhail. Great stuff here. 80 days left. I think really nice evolution. You can kind of actually hear over the kind of development of this, how we're talking about a long period of time, right? Like we get to this long drawn out kind of pad section where time really does feel like it slows down. So really, really solid writing there. Awesome. Yeah, great work so far. Completely agree. Killer stuff. This next one is up with David Neel in here in Control version 3 here. So I know he actually just recently uploaded and updated this. So if you heard it in the Feedback Friday thread before, this might actually be a new version for you. So yeah, definitely tune in. Guys, I'm hearing a lot of great support in here in the chat, which is awesome. If anyone hears anything that you'd like improved and stuff, don't hesitate to drop it in there. This is a chance for you guys to also train your ears, be calling out some things that you're noticing as well. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Scrat's asking, will these tracks be posting anywhere for members to get a full listen? Yes, so all of these are actually in the Facebook group, the EDM Tips Academy Facebook group. If you aren't already part of the course, you should have an invite in there. If you are enrolled in one of the EDM Tips Academy courses and you're not in here, feel free to shoot me an email at neil@edmtips.com. I'll drop that in the chat right here. And we can get it sorted out. Make sure that you guys are invited. But once you're in this group, you'll have the ability to drop your own submissions on these Feedback Friday threads. We drop them every single week. They actually drop Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That ends up being Friday over in Australia, which is why we do it that way. But yeah, if you just drop it in here, you'll be open for those submissions, and you can go back, listen to everyone else's. And as you guys can see, there's a ton of comments on a lot of these. There's some really great feedback, a lot to learn from just simply looking through this thread. listening, to what other people are doing, hearing other people's tips and tricks. There's a really big community around this and some really awesome stuff. All right. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and hear what David's got with control here. Lovely lush pads to start.
Control.
Really cool vocal effects there. I'd like to hear a little bit more stereo width, maybe from the reverb or on those like delays, the control, to just kind of match that epic sense of space that's coming from our pads. Another thing that I think would really help with this is we've got this really nice lush sense of space in the kind of low mids, and it is leaving a lot of really nice space for the airiness of the vocal, but I think kind of in the upper sides, we do have an opportunity. I'm gonna just silence this for a quick second. We do have the opportunity to fit in a little bit of noise, something with a little bit more atmosphere, some ambience, maybe some Foley. So consider something like right from the very start, like a white noise downlifter, or yeah, again, like maybe some Foley, like, maybe it's something in the rainforest or the sound of a stream, sound of a crowd. Really, really low volume, high and to the sides is gonna be key. Because otherwise it is gonna, overlap with that vocal. It might compete with, the pads and everything else. We just want that little bit extra texture for the people that are listening that might not have those low mids fully filled out. If I envision listening to this on an iPhone speaker, for example, I know that the body of, the sound coming out of the speakers isn't quite as strong. So anyone listening on that kind of speaker won't really get the full impression of your track to start because we don't have that high-end information coming with it.
Ready for you. Ready or not, I'm ready.
So right there, the delays on that vocal are actually exactly what I was referring to wanting in the kind of first part. Right now, as soon as that vocal fades away, those delays kind of fizzle out to the sides. That is perfect because it creates a really nice sense of separation between that lead and then that delay layer that comes after.
Ready for you.
I would like to keep that lead going up a little bit more. I think you have an opportunity to keep rising that energy. Cool. I think the kick sample in here is just like the sound selection of it is a little bit light, a little bit airy. I think to complement the rest of this mix perfectly, you would really benefit from having a deep kick, something with a lot of low end, without a ton of high end. And that's going to allow us to create even more separation in that kind of top to bottom contrast of the mix, where we have the airiness of that voice. And then the very floor of our mix, that lowest point, is even lower with a deeper. All right, let's skip ahead to just a couple other quick points here.
In control.
I think that reverb really needs to be brought out right there. Allow this space to kind of fill in and bring that up in volume. And then this is where that deeper kick will fit the vibe a little bit more too. Awesome. This is actually, that's the exact kind of percussive effect that I was referring to a couple of tracks ago here, where the rest of the mix is like really nice and wet. The drums have a little bit on there. It's not quite as wet as everything else, and not every element in the drums has that, but we still get that little bit of sense of space. Awesome. Great track here, David. Seeing in the chat, Miley's agreeing, yeah, deeper kick would be solid. Couple of people, kind of agreeing. Give that a shot, David, see what you think. I think if you don't like the sound of a deeper kick, or if you can't find the one, maybe just focus on taking some of the mid-range and high-end body out of the current kick. It just makes it seem like it's a little bit more of like kind of like an acoustic rock sort of sound than it is like an EDM style kick. All right, thanks very much, Miley. Stoked to hear the feedback is awesome so far. Yeah, Jack saying, yeah, same on the kick. Though on the laptop, it sounds better than it did on headphones. That definitely checks out, right? Like on headphones and full fidelity audio, we're able to hear a lot more of that low end body. When here, sorry, like with headphones and stuff, we're hearing, you know, a lot more of like kind of a full space. With the laptop sort of sound and stuff, it's going to emphasize a little bit more of the mid-range. So this particular kick is going to work nicely because it is mostly a mid-range kick. In the other listening environments, when we get the kind of full frequency spectrum and stuff, we're going to notice that little bit of imbalance as a result. Awesome indeed. All right, sweet. Let's go ahead and jump on. We've got Nebucide's Inner City Good Love remix here. So it's a radio edit, seeing that this is 312. So based on the concept that this is a radio edit, we should hit play and we should get right into the kind of meat of the idea here. Let's see what we got. Definitely.
Is this reality or just a dream? 'Cause it's so hard to believe that you are here with me. You are my vision.
Great groove, great foundation here. See you in the chat, Nebucide. Welcome, welcome.
The one I really love. I'll stand by you if you stand by me.
Hey, Nebucide, quick question for you. Is this track been mastered and everything? Like, is this fully mixed and mastered, or is this like a mix down? Where are you at with this stage?
Really love somebody, that's how a good love should be. Good love, good love,
Awesome. Not sure if you caught me. If you could drop it in the chat. We also might be on a lag, so apologies if you've already done it. Oh, yes, indeed. Okay, so it says you've mastered it yourself, but a very basic 10-minute job with very limited experience. All right, fair enough. Okay, so I think, you know, the core of this track is actually working really well. Give me 1 second. I just want to see what you got going on in the drop here.
and our ups and downs, but here we are, still together here and now. I remember every bow. Visions of love. You are the one I need, the one I really stand.
Oh, no, don't sweat it. I think there's just a natural lag from, you know, the kind of quick moment of streaming and stuff. So anyways, I think, you know, really, really, again, core writing is really strong with you guys here. It's been awesome listening to these tracks because I'm not hearing, you know, tonal conflict, things that are, you know, really killing the track before we even have a chance to produce it. So the writing at the core of this, really solid. Again, strong groove. Everything's kind of fitting together nicely. Frequencies aren't really clashing too much. The one thing that I've noticed is that we're not really getting the dynamic range and separation of the elements that I'd like to in this track. It kind of sounds like, you know, if we talk about our front to depth sort of space here, it kind of sounds like every element's sitting right around here. There aren't too many elements that like really pop out, not too many elements that sit, you know, way further back in the mix. Everything is just a little bit even. Now, the saving grace of that is that you have really awesome use of your stereo space. So that left to right separation is really, really strong. It's just that front to back separation that we don't quite have. To create some of this, a little bit of it's going to be, you know, lightening up maybe on your mastering. So if you have some heavy-handed compression, some heavy-handed limiting going on during that mastering stage, maybe reducing that just a little bit if you can for the sake of creating a little bit more dynamic mix. Something with a little bit more separation is going to be stronger. The other benefit of creating that additional separation is that we get, you know, more groove between our elements. If everything's kind of hitting in this same spot, we don't really have a good sense of push and pull. But if we have some things kind of going in and out throughout a track, that's going to pull our bodies in and out a little bit more, and people are going to be tempted to dance even heavier. So lightening up on compression, lightening up on limiting is definitely going to kind of help out with that, create a little bit more dynamic range. The other big thing that I think is going to really help with this is consider side chaining a little bit more during your mixing stage. So I know typically, like within EDM Tips, we introduce a lot of, hey, make sure you side chain, you know, your reverbs, big synths and stuff to like the kick, maybe the snare. That's not the only thing that we can and need to side chain to. So for example, in this particular track, this bass line has a lot of rhythm to it.
Remember every bow. You are my vision, visions of love. You are the one I need.
But I'm not really feeling and hearing that rhythm as much because there's a lot of other sustained information. Like, for example, those violins that are kind of staying up on the sides. Those stay at a pretty constant, like, da, da, da. Forgive my singing. But when they're staying, at that constant level, this like little bass thump isn't able to kind of poke out as much. Now, if you were able to set up a quick, relatively tight side chain on this string layer to the bass, that'll allow that bass to poke through a little bit more, and those strings will go down just ever so slightly at that moment. And the overall difference in volume won't really be noticeable to the listener, but you're going to hear a lot more clarity in the bass line as a result. So consider a few different layers that you might be able to do this with. I think starting with that bass line, allowing that to poke through a little bit more is going to be a big win. But yeah, start there, experiment with a few others. My general rule of thumb, like go for like maybe 3 to 5 types of this side chaining. You don't want every element side chain to every other element in your mix because that becomes super wonky. Really what we're trying to simulate is just like, hey, as one new element kind of takes the stage, everyone else on stage just takes a little bit of a step back. Awesome. All right, killer stuff. Yeah, if anyone has anything else that they noticed, drop it in the chat. I think everything else was working really solidly. I really think it's just the dynamic range in this track that needs some focus. Sweet. Yeah, I agree with Jack. Great tune. A really solid job on that remix too. We maintained a lot of the original vibe and stuff, but we get a new kind of take. We get that new rhythm and stuff. So really, really solid stuff. Yeah, cheers. Cheers, Nebucide. All right, let's check out this next one. We got Bonimo Space Dance here. Really cool sound selection here. Kind of reminds me of like some like Louis the Child sort of textures in those synths. With their most recent, like I think it was like the Space Jam EP or something. Like really nice job there. This is another track that would benefit from that same side chaining technique, right? Like we have that sort of sound that comes through, and because it's sustained, the like little blip, the lead that's been playing throughout the rest of this isn't able to poke out quite as much from a groove and dynamic perspective. So just the subtlest amount of side chaining, like I'm talking like 1 to 2 decibels of reduction at most. Like it really doesn't need to be much, but just that little bit of side chaining is going to create that more separation there. During this section right here, I am noticing just a little bit of tonal conflict in that kind of like ARP layer that's off on that right side here. With like the other notes that are kind of playing in there. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's only for such a short moment that it's not super problematic. Like the fact that that ARP player is moving fast helps you out here. It allows us to not sit on those moments of conflict so they don't stand out as much. That being said, there are a couple of those moments, like I said, where I'm noticing 2 notes kind of hit next to each other that shouldn't be. So just jump into your MIDI information, check that at any given time, like, we're not hitting notes that are only a semitone apart, that aren't any tritones apart, so that'll be 6 semitones apart, that sort of stuff. The closer that you can get the notes of that ARP aligned to the notes of this other lead that's been playing, I think you're going to have a little bit of a stronger foundation right there. Miley's also dropping a chat. Think it needs a little bit more percussion and groove. It's a little bit on the grid. I think I would agree with this. So, jump into that groove pool. See if you can get a little bit more kind of swing and movement out of this. Right there as well, right at that 126 moment, I heard a little bit more of that tonal conflict, but then the bass notes also had a little bit of that conflict in there. So, I think the biggest thing for you with this track, dive into the MIDI information, make sure that at any given point, those notes from the bass to the chords to the lead to that ARP layer are all kind of playing the same set of notes, or at least the same set of notes within a chord. Among all of those layers, at any given point, we really shouldn't hear more than like 4 different notes hitting at most. Anything more than that, we are really going to start crowding up that frequency spectrum. Now, that's not to say that, the bass can't play a C, the, chords can play a C, the lead can play C, and the other one can play C plus a D. Like, that's okay. That I would really only consider 2 notes because it's a bunch of C's and then 1 E. I'm talking like make sure that you don't have a C, a D, an E flat, a G, an A flat, and a B flat in there, right? Like try to limit it to a fewer notes rather. Nebucide's also dropping a polyrhythm, might work quite nicely on this one. Let's see. You know, I would agree. I think there's a little bit of this polyrhythm kind of like in there by default. You know, that synth has a pretty active pattern. This other main melody, the da 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 da, is playing a kind of its own rhythm and stuff. That being said, I think a little bit more kind of emphasis on those downbeats through the form of side chaining, which I see you just dropped in the chat. Stellar segue right there. So additional side chaining, a little bit more kind of up and down movement to the kind of kick and snare there, I think is going to just help with the rhythm and groove of this as a whole. It's also going to emphasize the kind of downbeats that are hiding within your polyrhythms right now. So to call out, you know, kind of like big wins and stuff for you, I think where you're at with this track, you've got really strong sound selection. I think these vibes are all sitting together really nicely. I think, you know, the mix and stuff is going to, you know, continue to improve, continue to grow as you continue to practice. But I think the biggest focus for you right now should be on really nailing down the MIDI notes, making sure that they're all tonally aligned. With that, I think, you know, the rest of this track's working nicely. I'm going to just skip ahead to a couple other quick moments, make sure that we haven't like missed anything just truly amazing here. Cool. One thing I did notice when I was flicking through there is that you actually do a really good job of having transitions kind of from section to section. I noticed those like noise, those swells coming in and stuff, snapping out at the next section. So good stuff with that. Keep that aspect of it up. Like I was saying, the biggest focus right now, focus on those tonal relationships, the MIDI notes that are actually being played. Awesome. All right, well, that takes care of those ones that I've queued up. Let's just keep going down the list and see what else we have here. So I believe the next one up is going to be Adam Miles' track here. Let's see, we got Listen Out. Let me go ahead and close these guys too. Cool, just really quickly before I move on, how's the volume and everything for you guys on the music? Is like the side shade ducking out of the way enough? Are you guys able to hear me when I'm talking over the music? I want to make sure before I just keep on at this, I can make some quick adjustments on the fly if need be. So for a quick second while this lag comes through, check, all good. Super sweet, thanks guys very much. Let's keep it going. All right, so this next one, we've got Miles Z here on SoundCloud, that's Adam Miles. We got Listen Out, let's see what we got going on. Hey David, if you're here or if you're watching this recording, that kick is exactly the kind of deep kick that we were talking about earlier. This one has that low end body, really nice and powerful there. So look out for something kind of exactly like this kick, maybe not a slightly different kick for the sake of, you know, variation, that sort of stuff, but that vibe, that deepness is what we were talking about. The groove of those little chord hits is perfect. Yeah, lots of support for this kick for sure. That's a great kick, great find here. So love this logo. All right, so right off the bat, I'm gonna give you like the same comment that I believe it was for Nebucide's track earlier, where the core of this is working really nicely, but everything kind of seems to be sitting in the similar sense of space, like right in the kind of middle of the track there. So getting some more of that side chaining among those elements, right? Like you have like that bass line and then that pluck that's kind of coming out, that da 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 da. Having some of those like more sustained elements side chain to those can be really, really nice. It's going to give you that extra separation, it's going to give you that extra bounciness, and it's going to get people to go up and down a little bit more as they're listening to your track as well. On top of that sidechaining thing, I would focus on just, changing some of those elements, like make a priority list for yourself of your various elements, right? So like, for example, like kick, vocal, that sort of stuff, higher priority than low-end atmospheres. Once you've got that list, consider, hey, can you actually increase that differentiation more? Can we add, maybe 1 extra decibel to some of the percussion or some of the lead layers that are coming through? And can we take 1 decibel away from some of those pads? I literally say 1 decibel because it needs to be subtle changes at this point. Anything too big and you're going to throw off the sense of space in your mix. Like I think that we still have a solid enough sense of space or sense of separation. We just need to enhance that, stretch out that front to back image a little bit more. Yeah, and Jack's saying maybe give their pads their own moment too. Yeah, I like that idea. I think like these pads are really, really nice. So, you know, you don't always have to have element sidechaining, right? Like you might have that sidechain automated on and off so that during one section, those leads can cut through a little bit more. But maybe in another section, we choose to give the pads a little bit more attention. Yeah, Miley's also agreeing a little more automation and sidechain selection. So a great way to kind of think about tracks like this is melodic house, definitely a lot of, you know, kind of slow building, slow movement, lots of layers flowing in and out over each other. I kind of like to think about these productions kind of like a Broadway play, or like, you know, a musical, some sort of theater performance. When someone important has something to say, they kind of take a step forward towards the stage. They project out into the audience, and meanwhile, everyone else takes that half step back. This is kind of what sidechaining is simulating, right? It's that tiny step back in the less important elements and that step forward in the more important ones. So kind of think from, you know, from the perspective of a stage, right? Like if all of these different instruments were on a stage, how could we push them forward and back to create a little bit more separation among them? That hi-hat pattern, the tick, 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 is just a little bit stale in groove. It's not clashing with the groove of everything else, but it's not quite giving me the same groove that your main melodic pluck is. The other thing, I think the final thing that I'd probably suggest on this track, try out a little bit of a longer tail, maybe a little bit of a brighter and airier reverb. The one that you've got in there, again, there's nothing problematic with it. It's not like I'm hearing buildup or conflict or anything else of the sorts, but I think you might be able to kind of enhance this vibe that's, you know, kind of like floating through the skies or something of the sorts with a little bit more washiness, a little bit more reverb in there. So just, you know, maybe an existing, just like a little bit of a high-end boost to your existing reverb, maybe increasing the decay time a little bit. And yeah, I'm seeing from my list, I'm using Ableton stock reverb. If you're doing that, absolutely, totally fine. Make sure you're on the quality mode and not the this kind of stock mode. So here, let me actually just jump over really quickly. You guys should be able to, nope, let's try this again. My Ableton window seems to stopped. Let me just really quickly change that. All right, so you should see my Ableton now. Confirmed, hopefully. All right, so with that, if you are going to use like the Ableton reverb, here's what it is. By default, I'm pretty sure it comes in at eco mode right here. This is a pretty low quality, and you know why a lot of people complain about the Ableton reverb is strictly because, you know, they actually just leave it on eco. Make sure that when it comes time to bounce your track, you're changing this to high. It makes a world of difference. Let's just hear that on this piano really quickly. So I've got this piano. I've got this on eco mode now, set 100%. Let's just hear a quick little riff. All right, pretty short. Let me actually give this a little bit longer decay time. Okay, like that's okay and stuff. If we set this to high mode, that reverb is just so much more connected, so much smoother. So just double check, make sure that you're using that high mode for those of you using the Ableton reverb. All right, let's go ahead and jump back over to Chrome here. Carry on with these tracks. All right, I'm seeing, also Miley's, you know, dropping, I don't know how to use Groove yet. Tell you what, let's just jump straight back into Ableton here. This is a pretty quick one to share. So within Ableton, once you have a clip, like it doesn't really matter, you know, what it is, if it's a MIDI or an audio clip, like I'm just gonna get a quick, just like record a drum pattern. Cool, simple drum pattern in there. What we can do, there's a couple of ways of doing this. My kind of preferred way is hit this little, you know, switch up icon in the lower left-hand corner of your clip, and that's gonna take you to the groove pool. From here, I kind of tend to prefer the MPC, the swing MPC ones. Those sound the most natural, but you know, experiment around with any of these. Once you have this window up and you know you're on that kind of hot swap mode, it's a simple matter of just kind of selecting whichever one you want, double clicking, and it's going to apply it to your clip. Now you won't actually see anything changed here unless you hit commit, and you can see all of a sudden there's a huge shift right there. But even if you don't hit commit, so long as it's saying here that change is you're gonna hear that change. You won't see it visually reflected until you hit commit. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you're dropping that same groove on like all of the elements that you're trying to add groove on. We don't want like, the drums having the swing MPC 18th and then the hi-hat or like some other element having this cha-cha-cha and some other element having this. No, we want to kind of keep the groove consistent across any given project. All right, let's see, just quickly catching up on the tracks here. Let's see. Definitely help. Yeah, MPC settings are pretty good too. Absolutely agree. Awesome. Yeah, and see a couple people notice. Yeah, that little reverb trick, absolutely huge. Makes a huge difference once we actually get that quality mode in there. I'm seeing Westlake's dropping the SP 1200 100 swing is good for deep house. Was used by Todd Terry and all back in the day. I didn't know that. That's awesome. I will definitely have to try that one out. Let's see where that one was showing up. Yeah, the swing SP 1200. Yeah, give that a shot. Why not? Try out all of them. See which ones are your favorite. This is one of those decisions that, helps create your own signature sound as a producer, right? Like which groove you prefer is going to, come across all of your tracks and people are going to like dancing to your music for that kind of reason. So mess around with these, have fun with them. My biggest recommendation is when you're first exploring groove, keep it simple. Don't try to add like groove to like a 50-track song. Try adding groove when you're like in that composition stage when all you have down is like the drums and the bass. If you have too much going on there, it's just going to get to be kind of a mess. It's going to be a little overwhelming. Start simple, build out from there. All right, let's go ahead and go back over to Chrome here. All right, I think that takes care of this track. Really, really solid tune there, Miles. Miles, yeah, I think that was again, yeah, Adam Miles. Great stuff there. Let's hear it in the chat for him again. If anyone else has anything to add to that, feel free to either jump in or add it in this chat or that Facebook group. Either way, it's up to you. All right, so this next one that we've got is coming from Jason Romer. Doesn't have a new week, but going to repost the last one for some more insights. Totally fine. We haven't given any live feedback on this yet, so it's still fair game for sure. We got Press F by War God, maybe. I think that'll be how I pronounce that one. Let's see what we got. 4-minute mark. Thank you for dropping that in the chat. Way to be ready for it. Hey, those reverb splashes on those snares and those percussion, perfect. That's exactly that kind of connection that I'm talking about. That little clap roll right there didn't quite fit the groove. I would double check the specific timing of those notes. Play that one more time. Okay, same thing goes for that like little white noise layer, that layer that kind of comes in right here. I'll play this again. The timing of it isn't quite in sync with the groove of everything else. Now, I will admit, by the end of it, there's actually a really nice kind of polyrhythm relationship between the kick, snare, and that kind of pattern, but to start, it is a little bit wonky. So, biggest suggestions, either try adding a little bit more side chaining in so that we really, keep that groove with the kick and snare kind of tight against that particular layer, or get into the warp feature or stretching feature, some way of making it kind of gel with the timing just a little bit more right there. Great job with that reverb splash over there to connect those sections. Love the constant kind of rise in energy. Like there's already a lot of energy, but I'm still wanting more. So great job with this. So leading up to that moment, I would probably recommend you've got some growth. It sounds like things might be saturating, opening up a little bit more. Let's emphasize that more. So add some, maybe some saturation drive over the course, like really build up the energy. I think as we get to this moment, we almost want to push the listener to the point of almost overwhelming them with power and sound. Like, picture yourself in a movie theater when listening to this kind of style track. Like, if you can envision a scene going on over this point, that energy is growing. It's like there's like a monster kind of looming in this, like looming in the depth and stuff, and it's just growing bigger and more present and stuff. And at this point, like, it should be really like almost terrifying the listener, really giving them that huge power. So add a lot of drive, maybe even automate some extra gain and stuff so that we actually just continue to get even louder as we approach this transition. I think you're gonna like make some people fall onto their knees when listening to this live. And then right there at 5 minutes, we do lose a little bit of momentum because we've lost a couple of those elements and we haven't really added anything. I think the way to kind of make that a little bit smoother is just a big, like alongside all of that drive and stuff, maybe also automate in a little extra reverb buildup that can then splash over across that moment, kind of like I said in that previous section. So yeah, just like a little bit more kind of build, emphasize that energy, and then carry it over with a little splash. Yeah, Jack's saying use distortion like Decapitator to add noise to the riser. I think, yeah, if you've got the Decapitator is the perfect type of saturator for this, because not only does it add a little bit of volume and beef, but Decapitator specifically, as a lot of you guys know, is pretty gritty. It adds some like a little bit of that kind of grunginess, that power to it. And that's exactly the vibe that we're looking for in this track. So Decapitator would absolutely be a perfect fit. Great call, Jack. One final thing that I would say, I think the kick sample that you have is really, really strong. Unfortunately, the top end of it is really getting swallowed up by the clap. So unless someone's listening with a dedicated sub, they're not going to hear as much of this kick as I think they can and should. So, couple of options. Start by just boosting the volume of your kick maybe 1 decibel, maybe taking the volume of that clap down 1 decibel. That'll allow those two to sit a little bit more evenly. If that doesn't quite do it, or if like that makes the low end of the kick way too loud, the clap way too quiet, then I would just use EQ and maybe boost a little bit of the high end of the kick a little bit to help it cut through the mix up. Just that little bit extra. Awesome. All right, killer track here. Let me just flip through a couple quick extra seconds, make sure nothing else kind of comes up. Awesome. Yeah, really nice filtering of the clap there at the end too, and that was a good little touch. All right, let's kind of move on to the next one here. So we got this one from Bruce. I know, Bruce, you're not able to be here live, but you are going to be watching the recording. You specifically asked about it, so this one is for you. Let's see what we got going on here. Completely agree. Nice groove here. This, like, it took me a second to kind of catch it, but as soon as I did, I was like, oh, okay, I can see myself bouncing. So that that like kind of bass line in there, I think we could get a little bit extra kind of, you know, grooving motion to that. So instead of just hitting on the quarter notes with that kick, maybe every once in a while it kind of plays off the kick. Right? So we have those extra like little pickup before, after the kick, just so we create a little bit more variation among them. Right now, the purpose of that kick, which is rooting our kind of downbeat, is just being doubled up by the purpose now of these chords, which is to, again, to kind of root that downbeat. So just a little bit of timing variation in there from like maybe even just one note every couple of measures or something else of the sorts is going to help, you know, create that differentiation and add even more danciness to this track. Same thing for these little do. See if you can like get off of the quarter note a little bit more, make it a little bit kind of more, you know, rhythmic and groovy as a result. There's like a little like snappy sort of pop thing happening kind of in that upper right hand channel area. That is exactly the kind of groove that I'm talking about bringing out. Something that doesn't hit exactly on those quarter notes and stuff, but instead is hitting within those pockets of the notes. other big thing that I think I'd like to hear in this is a little bit more attention to the reverb. So it's not as though there's like a conflict in the kind of sense of space or anything, but I think the actual reverb texture chosen doesn't quite fit the vibe. It sounds a little bit too like almost like clean studio for me. Whereas, like, you know, the instrumentation, the vibe of this, like, I feel like I should be in a huge open jungle-y space. So look for a reverb with a little bit more splash, a little bit more of an openness to it. And then also, you know, kind of on that note, consider laying in like a little bit of like jungle foley, like maybe some birds chirping or a stream going, something to just even add to that, you know, sense of space. With a track like this, I have a feeling, you know, you're trying to tap people into that vibe, you know, that be in nature, be kind of happy, be dancing, moving around and stuff. So, you know, one of the best ways to make them feel like they're in nature is to give them sounds of nature. So just really small amounts of that layered into your track. I think that's going to go a long way. Nebucide saying, would like some sort of shaky maraca in the top end of this. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think just that little bit of extra, you know, percussive groove, that emphasis on the percussion, I think will be a good, you know, kind of direction for you. Yeah, or Crash Bandicoot. Did enjoy this. Couldn't imagine being used in Ace Ventura 2 or Crash Bandicoot. 100% yes. I completely agree, Jack. Spot on vibe check there. So yeah, Bruce, like, you know, lean into that a little bit more, use those textures, use that Foley, mix that into your track, play off that reverb kind of sense of space, and I think you're gonna be in a really good spot. Coconut filled with rice. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, how natural can we get? Spot on. Good suggestions, Nebucide. Good kind of calls here, Jack. Awesome. All right, guys, we are coming up near the end of this first stream. Let's get one more in here, and then we'll kind of wrap things up from there. Like I said at the start of this, guys, I know just, you know, by reality, we couldn't get through the whole chat. I'm going to be taking note of where we end off here. So, for those of you watching, looks like Andreas is, so Dale Cook, you're going to be up next after this. Promise you're going to be the first to go next week, so long as, you know, you submit and, you know, continue to, you know, submit each fresh Feedback Friday. But I will have you guys up. We're going to be moving down that list accordingly. So if you didn't get to this time, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you've still learned a lot. And like I said, I promise we're going to be getting to you guys moving forward. All right, let's check out what we got here. A little bit of a mix in. I think some extra side chaining on this bass to allow the kind of kick to groove in and out a little bit more is going to help a ton. Right now that bass, or that whatever this like wah 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 sound, is kind of just sitting statically in the mix, but I could get a lot more pumping out of it. Good snare choice there. I'm hearing a little bit of like phasey, thin texture in the high end of that kind of those percussion layers. So if you're using any like stereo imaging techniques to create some artificial width there, yo, see you later, Miley. Thanks for tuning in. If you're using any stereo width techniques there, I might suggest, like, you know, tweaking them a little, see if you can get rid of that phasing. If it's just part of the sample itself and what you've got going on, I would just recommend something like some decapitator, some sort of like noisy saturation, maybe even throwing a little bit of those hi-hats through a vocoder with a noise signal can be a nice little touch. Something that kind of thicken them up just a little bit, I think will carry you a long way. Right there at the 155 mark, I am hearing a little bit of tonal conflict between that kind of bass notes and those higher end notes that just came in. So on this one, double check those MIDI notes, make sure they're aligning. If they are, and you know, you're like, you know, you can't figure out why they don't quite sound the same, dive into your synth. Make sure that that synth isn't like pitched up 5 semitones on a layer or something else of the sorts. I know that's something that, you know, quite frequently happens when, you know, when we end up using a lot of presets. So just double check for that. Past that, let's see. Yeah, Jonah saying maybe drop the octave. I'm assuming you're referring to the bass there. I would kind of agree. I think this bass could use a little bit more low end. So if not just, you know, moving the whole bass down an octave, maybe add another layer in there that at least has that lower octave so we get a little bit more beef and body. To be honest, I'd actually also agree, you know, that lead is also probably an octave too high. So maybe bringing that lead down an octave will also help out. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this first one. I have had a blast chatting with you guys, going through these tracks. You guys have absolutely crushed it with the tracks this week, giving some really good feedback. If this is something that you guys have liked, we are going to be doing this every single week. If you want to get even more in depth with it, I've got to give a quick shout out to the 8-week masterclass that we have putting on. Every single week, not only do we have sessions like these where you get to jump in, ask questions, get feedback on your music, but on your own tracks, I listen all the way through. I give you like 3 to 4 paragraphs of really detailed stuff. So not just like, hey, like get some side chaining in there. It's like, okay, hey, here's how you can set and adjust your sidechain compressor to really perfectly match with it. So if it's something you might be interested in, check out the link on my Twitch page. You guys are on it right now, so you should see it easily enough. Let's just get that pulled up for you. There's like a quick little link to the masterclass. Seeing some people saying thanks very much. Guys, thank you so much. Absolutely stoked to keep this going for you. Like I said, you should be able to see this then in my Twitch page. Right here, this little link to the EDM Tips Masterclass. Check that out. If you have any questions on it whatsoever, don't hesitate to hit me up. I'm here. Will's here to chat. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am stoked to keep this going. We'll see you guys in the Facebook group in the next Feedback Friday, and then 1 week from now for this next live stream. Cheers, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead.